this is not a step change. This is a magnitude change. And so when a magnitude change happens, there's no rule book of what to do. And so what we have to think about is that is something in which we have to come together and we really deeply think about how to ensure that we're not leaving people behind or leaving places behind or companies, organizations behind just because something is possible. It doesn't mean that if something is possible, it doesn't mean it's better. And it doesn't mean that it's ethical. And it doesn't mean that it's something that we should be doing.
Hey everyone, welcome to AI Trends with Ash. This is Ash Bala, your host. Join me in this series as I chat with industry experts, thought leaders, and professionals to gain insights on how AI is shaping the future of work. Whether you're a high schooler curious about AI in any industry or a working professional to gain more knowledge, this series has something for you. In today's episode, I am thrilled to interview Amanda Bickerstaff, the founder and CEO of AI for Education. With over 20 years of experience in the education sector, Ms. Bickerstaff brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the conversation. Her dedication to empowering educators and students through the ethical adoption of AI is truly inspiring. Ms. Bickerstaff's journey in education began as a high school biology teacher, where she has developed an understanding of the challenges and opportunities that AI can offer in the classroom. As an EdTech executive, Ms. Bickerstaff has witnessed firsthand how AI can transform learning experiences and maximize the potential of both schools and specifically teachers. She's also a frequent consultant, speaker, and writer on the subject, guiding workshops and professional learning sessions across K-12 and higher education. Throughout her career, Ms. Bickerstaff has held key leadership roles, including Chief Executive Officer and National Director, where she has taken the initiative to revolutionize education through innovative technologies. Her commitment to empowering educators and schools through AI is evident in her extensive dedication to the field. Join us as we explore Ms. Bickerstaff's insights on the role of AI in education, the challenges and opportunities it presents, and how it can shape the future of learning. Without further ado, Amanda Bickerstaff, thank you for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, that was a wonderful introduction. I don't usually get to hear that live, so you did a beautiful job and just really excited to be here with you.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much for being on my show. Without further ado, let's get into the questions. So my first question is, how has your background as a high school teacher influenced your passion for the integrating AI into education?
That's a really great question. And it's something that I think is one of the reasons why the work that we're doing at AI for Education is resonating, is that it is coming from this really deeply practical place. Like, I remember being an early teacher. I remember working with students of various backgrounds that had special needs and, unique needs that I couldn't necessarily manage within one class period. I was a high school biology teacher in the Bronx. So I had 125 students at least a semester, 5 different, topics, 5 different days. Like my first period class, I don't know if you're in the morning, really quiet, everyone's really listening. And then after lunch, it's chaos and confusion. And so, those experiences really have stuck with me. It's also stuck with me in terms of the importance of equity, of making sure that we don't really think about, I don't think of education as a place for equality, meaning that everyone gets the same thing. I believe it's a place for equity, where we're actually giving people what they need to reach the same point and the same success. And so actually, you're going to have a different experience. You got, your parents and your experience and the background that you have. It's very different than someone not only in the US, but also across the world. And so all that's to be said is that when we think about the opportunity of AI, what it is this first really big opportunity to democratize access to technology. And what I mean by that is that, I don't know if you like to code. I actually ran a coding academy for a bit of time. And so I dabble, but I'm definitely not a technologist. And before this, if I wanted to build a website, if I wanted to create a product, I would need to have a lot of technical knowledge of how to talk to computers, right, and program them and the algorithms that you need to set in place. And what's happened with the advent of ChatGPT and other generative AI tools is that now I can do very similar things just with natural language. I can just talk to it, even images or voice. And what that does is I think that allows us to create a space in which schools and equity is possible, because what we're doing is like everyone could have access to this great knowledge base, these thought partners, but it's going to require some effort, and it's going to require thinking back to like when I was a teacher and what it meant to be that person, and to ensure that we're creating things that really work and are fit for purpose.
That's amazing. Yeah, I like how you brought up equity instead of specific terms in terms of classroom, because every student deserves their own unique path, and it's not fair to concise all of it into one. Yeah, that's great. So my next question is, what specific areas of AI are you most passionate about?
So good question. Well, I'm definitely passionate about education. And like it's all over our website. And, I think it's important to have right now, everything's moving so fast. Like every day something new is happening. And so really focusing deeply on education. So for me, what I'm most passionate about are kind of three areas. The first area is like, how can we save teachers time and allow for an opportunity for teachers to be able to focus on the classroom. So on average, teachers can spend 10 to 12 hours a week on top of teaching, just doing lesson planning, grading papers, answering emails, doing paperwork. And that can be really a lot of work. I mean, especially since, you get to school at 7:30 in the morning and you might not leave until 4 or 5, you might have graduate work, et cetera. And what we're seeing is that there's a lot of burnout happening, especially after COVID. And so we have a lot of teachers leaving the profession. And in fact, so many that there are huge shortages in places. And a lot of it comes down to the quality of life of teachers. And we don't often think of like teachers as professionals, like the same way that we think about people that work in startups or in hospitals, but teachers are professionals, and they deserve the same types of supports to help them streamline and create better like quality of life within their own experiences. So that's number one. So things like lesson planning tools, email response helpers, like, so, you're having a bad day and you need to write an email to a parent and making sure that it's got the right tone that you can check and send. Things that can help with like building different plans around student needs, et cetera. That is number one. Number two, the thing that I'm also really excited about from the other point of view is that you just said it yourself. Every student deserves their own unique path of learning. And we've always talked about, like as an ed tech founder, like personalization, differentiation, like making it work for everyone was always the promise. And we've really not gotten there. But with the opportunity of generative AI, which can like the more that it improves in terms of its memory, its ability to understand a student and to create learning pathways that move within a student's zone of proximal development, which is just like the level of challenge that's still challenging, but not so challenging that you can't do that like within your own frame. And also in a sense of engagement, like I want to make it interesting to you. You love podcasts and like thought leadership. And so let's craft those types of tools just for you. And there are a lot of really great tools coming out in that world, whether that's early reading, early math. I think we're still like 8 to 12 months away from like the first really good ones. Conmigo is an example, but I think there's a ton of way to go for these personalized learning tools. And the third thing is like, how are we going to create better schools? And what like actually reframe what education is? Like right now, education is the same pretty much that it's been for like 150 years. One of my favorite anecdotes is that, Finland's known as this like really cool, like really good education system to take, we look at it for advice. And they did like outdoor education at one point. And then there was like a photo and it was just kids in desks in rows with a teacher in front of a chalkboard outside. And so like it wasn't like outdoor education. It was like just take it and put it outside. And that's a real example of what's happened, even with one-to-one devices, internet, and all of these great technology tools. And so how are we going to completely reframe schools to be able to really support student learning, student emotional and social emotional growth, but also their skills for the future. Like we don't know actually what the skills of the future are going to be. So I have this real like interest and hope that like that's that third place that we're really going to be able to focus on. So like schools are pretty fun and interesting, engaging, but also meaningful for everyone involved.
That's perfect. Okay, yeah, I really like how you use reframing because everyone has like, especially teachers and districts have set mindsets on what like school should be, but it's important that we should reframe it into a more like equitable path for students. And yeah, I love that. Great. So my next question is, how do you see technology changing the way students learn and interact with each other in the classroom?
It's a good question. So I think that, you know, when we think about the ways in which technology can help and like and support collaboration and these 21st century skills, we talk about critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. That's what, you know, the skills of the future have been thought of. So they're all like really like either soft skills or they are the actual part of thinking, right? Deeply and creating novel applications and solutions. And so technology has the opportunity, I think, to not only provide that personalized path we talked about, like your own like AI agent that knows you really well, but also like this idea of collaborative work. And so I have a colleague, Matt Miller, who's at Oko Labs, who's taking the approach of using generative AI and other machine learning models to create small group instruction that even though students are interacting in a small group with headsets and a computer, they're actually deeply like they're getting their own problems that are similar, but that are for them. And it's driving through a game-based application conversation about math. I don't know if you like math or don't like math, but very rarely do we have really good conversations about like exciting conversations about math across an entire group of students that might not be confident or might not have it be their favorite subject, and then those that love it. And so I think that that's an example of like how technology can create the space where that engagement and that collaboration is centered. And it's doing it in untraditional manners in the sense that it's not something that would commonly be happening for all kinds of reasons. So I think that's one. I think the second is this opportunity for students to create together. Like right now, like you and your fellow like, friends and students and, peers could go and create a website with natural language. You can do drawings, take the drawing, put it into Figma, which is a design tool, and then have Figma do a decent job already of creating a wireframe with HTML and CSS, that front end language that you can do. And that's just like how, like I'm sure like you've drawn on a napkin before and you're like, this would be a great idea for, whatever the next thing is. And I think that that's going to be really cool too, is that opportunity to create together and to have that be something that's truly collaborative, but also supercharged. Like you do, like you can, I know a 15-year-old Krishav who is building, or I think he's already built an online tutoring tool. He's 15 years old. And, and so he's definitely in your, you guys are cut from the same cloth in terms of that entrepreneurship. But like it's possible for him now, what wouldn't have been possible 9 months or a year ago, because the technology is enabling him to build with colleagues, but also just to build, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. And it's interesting how kids, especially like younger kids, like 15 in high school, can make their own like websites, or they can be their own entrepreneur, and like the the advancements. So that's amazing how that's becoming a reality. So my next question is, for high school students who are interested in pursuing a career in education, what specific opportunities do you see emerging with the integration of AI?
It's really interesting. First of all, more kids become teachers. We're pretty cool. And you get to help people, and you get to make impact. I just want to say that. So first of all, do it. Number two, I think that AI is going to be really interesting because it's going to start to kind of where the sky is the limit, the creativity is the limit, right? And so if you're thinking about getting into education, whether that's becoming a teacher or you're tutoring for, outside of school, or you're thinking about even building a tool for teachers or students or families or school leaders, is that what you want to think about right now? And I just had a great conversation with two students that are working on their own generative AI ed tech tool. And one of the things I said to them that I think resonated a lot was like, don't think about just right now if that makes sense. Think about what's going to happen in 2 years. And so if you're thinking about going into education, start to think through what you want education to become and what is possible. And your creativity is the limit. So get familiar with tools that are great for building engaging activities and maybe do it with your friends. Like, I mean, it's a little bit nerdy, but I guess, hashtag nerd, but like, this is something in which you can build that and start to build those opportunities and those that opportunity to create that higher engagement, that learning opportunity in all kinds of situations. But also there's this opportunity for you to learn deeply as well. And so let's say that you want to teach in a specific area or context. You can use ChatGPT and other tools to actually help you learn. And so if you really was like, you really want to be a history teacher, but you don't know that much about it, you can use these tools to actually help you go through different key parts that you would need for your certification. And so I think that that's really going to become more and more possible. And what I'd say is that even if you're not wanting to go into education, you could use those same ways of doing and thinking and using for your own learning of anything. And again, sky's the limit here. So if you want to become the next, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or you want to become the next, amazing entrepreneur or creator, you can do that now if you put a bit of effort in, and it's going to get better and better. But it's so much more possible today, and so it'll be even more possible tomorrow, in a year, by the time you graduate. I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy what the world's going to look like then.
Yes, of course. And I think it's really important that you bring up ChatGPT because a lot of parents especially think that ChatGPT will make kids more lazy in a sense because they can use it to cheat. But I think it's also important to make the point that it can help students with their work more than make them allow them to cheat, because it gives you the opportunity to have a self-based learning where you can search up your own questions and stuff like that. So I think that's really important.
I totally agree. And in fact, there was a recent Junior Achievement just put out their most recent survey. I will say sample sizes right now, it's kind of a crazy world. So I would not use any kind of survey that has 1,000 whatevers responses as a real signal what's happening in the market, because it's changing so quickly and it's something that's quite chunky. Like some people really use it, some don't. But it said that about 62% of students want to use or are thinking about using or have used it for homework and other work. But quite a few of them believe it is something that would be considered cheating. So one of the things I would say is that we don't always give students the enough trust that they also know that if you do it once and maybe it was great, like the second time, you're probably not going to do it because it doesn't feel right or you didn't learn it. And when you were asked it again, you hadn't actually done the work of it. So it hadn't been part of your neural network, right? Like you didn't actually have that be part of the way you're thinking. So if you were asked about application of it, even though you had ChatGPT push a button, you never did that work for it to be part of the way you think and can reframe. And so I think that there's a lot more that we can trust students to use it correctly with support. And I think this is really important. Not only students, but teachers, school leaders, your parents, life, everyone's going to need to think about what actually is acceptable use and what's not. When do we cite it? I talk to people all the time. If I'm building a PD session, I will say, I use ChatGPT to help me. It's on the thing because I want people to understand and normalize that I'm using it not to build the whole thing, but I'm using it to help me create something better. And I think that is where we need to come together. There will be people, not students, but people that will abuse and or find ways to hijack something to work for their own needs. It's always going to happen. But I think that it's something that we need to come together as a community to understand how to not do that and make sure that it's very clear with guidelines to get started so that we're not just trying to we're not all trying to figure it out at the same time.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I think it's important to state that it could be used as a source more than a cheating way to do stuff. So yeah, that's amazing. So my next question is, with the rapid advancement in AI, what skills do you believe will remain valuable for individuals working in the education sector? And what skills will be taken over by AI?
I mean, I'm glad you like waited a bit to give me with the 1-2 punch. That's a hard question. And I think it's something that's really scary to people. And at first I want to say, whoever's listening to this, I want to validate concerns. There are and will be, and have already been types of work or outputs that have been what I would call like degraded or downgraded with AI. And so one of the things I'll say is that first of all, there was some research that had posited or that this human creativity test would not be completed by an AI tool until 2050. And the most recent reframing of that, a reestimation, is 2024. So first of all, I want to say that that's not a couple years, that's, a couple decades. And we all were caught flat-footed, including the makers of the thing, like, and so there wasn't really, this is not a step change. This is a magnitude change. And so when a magnitude change happens, there's no rule book of what to do. And so what we have to think about is like, that is like something in which we have to come together and we need to really deeply think about how to ensure that we're not leaving people behind or leaving places behind or companies, organizations behind just because something is possible. It doesn't mean that if something is possible, it doesn't mean it's better. And it doesn't mean that it's ethical. And it doesn't mean that it's something that we should be doing. For example, the writer's strike and the actor's strike, part of the sticking point was that the ability to use someone's image, pay them for one day, and then use it with rights forever through AI. Just because you can do it doesn't mean it is responsible, ethical, or it's the right way to do things. So I just want to say that first. But there are things that have already become like kind of clear that AI is really good at. It's really good at copywriting. It can write you a good 5-paragraph essay. It can write you a great blog. Like it won't be perfect, but it'll get you pretty close. It's really good at creativity and like kind of giving you like 2,500 ideas. And so that's also something that could be like strategy work. New tools around Photoshop and computer vision can automatically fix a photo that would have taken a lot of time and effort. The same with animations and other types of pieces, photography, graphic design, etc. So there are definitely some areas that are already at risk. But then on the other end, I think that the things that are going to keep mattering, or that doesn't sound right, but are going to keep being important are these human creativity pieces, this ability to make connections, this ability to recognize what people need. Like in a classroom, like I can have an AI that helps me, assign everything to everybody, but I can't, like, what if you're frustrated? Or what if someone's computer doesn't work? Or what if there's a fire alarm? Or what if someone's sleepy? Or what if someone's fighting? Like all of that is what I'm thinking about because that's my job as a teacher is not just giving you a lesson or activity. It's connecting the dots and making sure everyone is like moving towards the same goal in the sense of learning, not necessarily the same goal and what they actually end up with, but like we're getting there together. So I think that that's really going to be very important forever. I think that humans are, we are super complex, amazing beings that can do so much. But our real gift, I think that's going to continue and still have value is that ability to connect, understand, empathize, and to create quick, responsive, like ideas and reactions that create better experiences for people, like turning around something and making it better, or identifying when someone's having a bad time and pulling them out of that. I think that that's going to stay. I don't know what else is. Like, honestly, maybe lesson planning isn't really a thing anymore, or, tutoring is quite different, or, we do grading differently. Like all of that, I believe is going to happen, but I don't think that we'll ever be able to get rid of that human component. But I think what will happen is we'll focus on it more. So my job as a teacher will be to create relationships, to be able to help students with social emotional learning, help them collaborate in those 21st century skills we talked about.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, emotion is a very big aspect of teaching, and it like allows the student and the teacher have a very like emotional bond with each other, and only the teacher knows like how much the student is learning and how they can learn. So yeah, I think that's really important to point out. Great. So my next question is, what are some problems with school districts that AI could potentially help solve?
Oh man. First of all, like, I think okay, so this is going to get pretty technical. So but I'll try to explain it. One of the things I'm most excited about, let's go back to hashtag nerd. Like it's going to be hashtag data nerd for this piece, is that there's structured data versus unstructured data. So like unstructured data is like observations, classroom notes, curriculum, content, like things that are kind of written out, qualitative data. And it's very, very hard to analyze that data or find value in it or query it or ask that, right? So I'm really excited because educational institutions have a lot of that. They have a ton of content and curriculum and observations and emails and letters and IEPs, all these things. And so we're going to have more and more opportunity to be able to access and understand trends and analyze those pieces and to find value in them. Like I no longer have to think about finding that best piece of content because I can ask a chatbot to go to our content and find me the best thing, not only because it's there, but because it meets certain metrics or it's been highly rated or whatever it may be. So I think that's really exciting. I think, again, we're a little bit further out. Like that's not right now, but it will be. I think that there are things around streamlining the way that we create pathways for into teaching and for ways that we support teachers and leaders and students through finding ways to like streamline administrative tasks or things that happen outside of the classroom, specifically for teachers and leaders, but then for students actually like have them have more valuable time outside the classroom than a traditional homework. I'm sure you've had your worksheet and you're like, oh man, another word problem. And so I think that that's a big part. I think the third part is like, again, around being able to do more with less. So like we have like our budgets are being like cut. So we got a lot of new funding that came in during COVID. And then what's happening is that's going to be cut in the next 14 months. And then not only that, but there are new mandated, like big budgets mandation saying you have to buy X, Y, and Z, which means that there's very little money left for other things. And so we have to do a lot in schools for not a lot of money. So how can we do more with less? And I think that AI is going to help us do that by finding places in which we can, have less tools we pay for because we have better tools that do more things. Or we have the opportunity to have a better working environment and less people leave. Like one of the biggest costs to any business is when someone leaves and you have to rehire and train someone. It costs between $30,000 and $100,000, depending on the work. And we don't really think about that, but it's real. And so if a teacher leaves your school or your district, moves to another, there's a real, not only opportunity cost, but actual cost. So if there's all these ways in which AI can help with saving that time and money and, creating that better space, then what we should be able to do, again, is more with less, which is something that is just really important in education.
Yes, of course. AI can be really helpful for education in general, and especially school districts. Like you said, it can help do calculations or like important things for like school districts. So that's cool. My next question is, empathy and emotional interactions are essential for education. So in your opinion, can AI ever truly replicate human emotion?
Again, you're hitting me with the hard stuff. Oh man, this is something I think about a lot because actually when I started AI for Education, I started building a generative AI tool for well-being because I'm an author in that space. I launched a product in my last company around student well-being. It's something I have an enormous amount of like my own care. And, like this is something that I really, really believe is important. And when we started doing this, a couple of things I realized is that we're significant, issues with actually creating something that was focused on well-being, especially in a chatbot format. For a couple of things, it's very hard to replicate human interactions. It's very hard to understand tone and through text only. It's also really hard to know when something is like a risk, like something that is showing risk for a student versus something that's just to be slang or something else. And so, because a lot of that stuff is pretty subtle. So that's right now. And, there are ways in which AI can, read faces or make good decisions based on text. but those are predictive. They're not thinking. Okay. And this is a big thing, is that there's the difference between thinking and computing. And so we have this curriculum for students, and like one of the second lesson is the difference between thinking and computing. And so right now, like without general AI, like there's no like human like thinking. It is predictive, right? It's computing. So that isn't really what humans do. It isn't what humans do. And then you have to add on top of that the human interaction, the layer of like, mirror neurons. How do we empathize? How do we understand? You look happy, you look sad, but then maybe you get really nervous and start laughing. And so if you do that, like maybe an AI believes, because most of the people, if they start laughing, they're having a good time, not because they're terrified or nervous. I know that I'm very funny. There's actually a funny thing. My best friend and I went whitewater rafting. He went under the boat, and there's this picture of me hysterically laughing, not because I was like happy he was under the boat, but because I was like responding to him, like to this situation. And that was how my nervous system did it. Right. And so if I showed that to, an AI, they'd be like, she's having a great time and maybe wants to like hurt her friend. And that was not the case at all. So I think that there's something to be said. Like there's a lot of room to grow. I don't know though. Like the thing about this right now is, if anybody tells you with anything with a degree of confidence that's 100% or even 90% about what the world's going to be like in 5 to 10 years, don't think that they're telling you the truth, or they're being a little too confident, because there are so many things that are happening so quickly. Like not only does generative AI manage to change in how we can interact with technology, but because it makes it easier to create technology, because people can co-produce code now, it means that it speeds up the development process, not just for generative AI, but for all technology. And so what we're going to see is this like growth curve, right? This U curve, in which it's going to start going faster and faster and faster and faster. And so what that means, though, is that the degree of confidence in which I can tell you yes or no, I feel confident in a couple things. Like we're not going to know. I feel very confident that we're not going to know what it is, but I can't tell you with any fidelity if there will be the ability for an AI tool to be able to tell you with pretty easily that you're having a bad day and you need a cookie or whatever you're like, the thing that makes you the happiest, a hug, a warm blanket, Netflix, whatever it is. Like there is an opportunity that can happen. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's also important to notice that human emotions are very diverse and there's a big spectrum of it. So like you said, you could nervous laugh, but AI could not know the difference between the two. So yeah, that's an interesting point. My next question is, what's your favorite part about what you do, and how did you find your passion in AI?
Oh man, well I get to talk to cool people like you. Like how awesome is that? Like I think I was talking about this today. We had this webinar series and it had this crazy idea. We didn't have a mailing list. We didn't have anybody. And I was like, what if we do a webinar every Wednesday through the summer? Like someone would come, and I was like, maybe 10 people. And we've had between 500, 800, 300 like people, and lots of like people from all over the world. And so, but what's great about it is what I love about that is that I get to interact and engage with people, not only that I have them panelists, whether that's students or school leaders like last night, or people that are building tools, but I also get to like interact with the audience. I don't get to see them, unfortunately, but I get to interact with them through their chats and questions. So that's one of the things I love the best. I think that you asked why I like AI, but I'm just deeply motivated by people, and I'm deeply motivated by like helping people and wanting them to have what they need to be successful. And so that's what I love the most. I also like building. Like I don't know about you, but like this podcast, like I like building stuff. Like I like strategy. I do everything from right now. I'm doing like high powered thought leadership to like literally taking someone's name after they finish our new course, putting, cross-referencing it into tools, building the certificate, emailing them the thing, like I'm doing everything. And that's part of what I think being an entrepreneur is. Like you just enjoy the action of it as much as you enjoy the thing that you're building. So that's on one part. And then my passion for AI came, like my origin story is really, really like for AI for education is like, again, like not very, it's kind of funny. It's very specific. I worked at a company that we had 200 courses that I developed mentally edited, meaning I was the only person that looked at them, all of them in 20 months. So less than 2 years. And it was thousands of pages. And we had to have 3 rubrics per each course. So that's 600 rubrics. And, we're talking fully formatted, the whole thing. And so the first thing I ever asked ChatGPT to do was to write me a rubric. And it wrote me a rubric and it formatted it in a table. And my life was changed. I was like, this is amazing. This is something that would have taken me 45 minutes to an hour to do correctly, especially from nothing. It was so easy to make mistakes because they're so small, like the changes between the wording across the criteria, very small. And that was the moment. And I just realized right then, one is, man, this is going to change everything. Like, it's going to make lesson planning easier. It's going to make like personalization more like possible. It's going to take time out of like class down to like a really like doable level. But then I also realized that like it's really, really hard in schools to make real transformative change, regardless if it's technology or not. And so we have, lots of bureaucracy, very slow to change, risk averse, and technically underskilled a lot. A lot of teachers they're not coders, they're peoplers. Like they're focused on people. And so that's why I started AI for Education. And so it's really about the intersection of like, how do we show people the value? But how do we do it in a way in which schools and leaders and educators and students can understand? And the last piece we haven't talked too much about is how do we do it responsibly? Because AI tools are actually not fit for purpose for schools right now. The foundational models, which are built, like people are building upon and interacting with, like ChatGPT, Bard, Bing, and Claude, all have major issues that are not only issues for the greater, like everyone, but have very specific issues for schools. Number one is they hallucinate. They're predictive. They make stuff up, and they make stuff up in a way that's very hard to know they're making stuff up. It will give you a URL and it will work, and it will not have anything to do with what you've done because the thing can't access the internet. Okay. Number two, it's biased. The internet is what these foundational models have been trained on. I don't know about you, but the internet isn't really known as a fair and measured place. Like we have misogyny, racism, sexism, like we have all the isms, right?
Yes.
And pockets of good stuff too. But that means that all these models are biased because of the way they've been trained and how we use them. The third thing is around privacy. How do we sure that privacy is being like really the center of what's happening? Their data leaks happen all the time. Even tools that say they're not keeping data to train will keep it for 30 days. If you put something about yourself in that and then it gets like leaked by accident or student information goes somewhere, it stays in a chat or whatever, like that's hugely issue. Like there's huge issues about that. And then the last thing we talked about before is equity. Not everyone has access to these tools. Some places like Canada don't have Bard, or like you have to have high bandwidth, or you're not in the US. And so there's and like in the case of like schools, like some school systems, specifically like public schools, don't have access right now to ChatGPT because it's been banned. But then a private school does, and it's being integrated. And so there's inequity that's happening all over the system. So that's to be said of like, that's the third piece that we haven't talked too much about, but that really is a huge part of why we started AI for Education and why I'm so excited about doing this work is because we want to make it possible to have that responsible adoption across those 3 areas.
Yeah, it's awesome to realize that AI can be used in any like field or career, not just like software. It could be used for education, for construction. It can be used for anything. So that's really cool. So my next question is, in your opinion, is the societal concern about an AI apocalypse just merely hype for movies, or is it a genuine concern?
I was at a conference and some people were giving me a hard time that I was bringing Skynet. Like I was going to be and I was like, first of all, I'm not building this foundational model. So if it happens, it's not me. But no, I think that, okay, this is my hot take for today. When one of the key architects of, like generative AI from Google, left and said, this is terrible, or when the 1,000 people, big scientists, technology centers said that this is an extinction event. I feel like they were covering their butts a bit. Like, I think that what we talked about is how much faster and everyone was caught flat-footed, and everyone's kind of like scrambling now to understand what it really means. And it happened too fast for there to be like real understanding of the possibilities. And so I don't actually think it's an extinction event. I mean, I think that it has enormous power to be misused, like people using it for creating spam campaigns, or, doing, more cold, like more spam calls, and, or, all kinds of things that can happen. People's, data being taken and reframed in ways that are really like difficult. We talked about equity and like, who has access. If all of a sudden all these tools become paid, it's going to create a really difficult place for the majority of people that can't afford a software like this. So that's all to be said, that there are enormous risks. The AI apocalypse, I think, is something in which, if we do what we're doing right now, which is you and I talking about this, and putting effort into a more responsible adoption, and really thinking deeply about the impact of these tools and doing it in coalition, we have the best chance of mitigating these issues and ensuring that like we're not in a position where we have this dystopian world. Instead, like, let's have, like, I'm all for it. Let's do it the other way. Like, why can't we talk about, the AI opportunity? It doesn't mean we can't be responsible, but like, I'm super excited for everyone in the world to have a better chance of learning, to have access to the foundational skills they need, to have a better quality of life, to be able to collaborate and communicate across the world, and to have things that don't get frustrated or impatient or think about your background and bias that exists. They don't, like, a chatbot doesn't care where you're from. It doesn't care what you look like. It doesn't care if you went to the dean's office once. It cares about, like, it actually, and also you can ask it the same question about 35 times and it's going to keep answering it, And so I think that that's where I would like to focus. And so right now I will say, do not think the AI apocalypse is going to happen, but only if we work together.
That's awesome. Yeah. AI is a very powerful tool. And like you said, we need to be responsible in order to like maintain it like that and not have an AI apocalypse. So that's amazing. Well, that was my last question for the day. So thank you so much for your insightful comments and thoughts. The topics we covered at the intersection of AI and education will really help our student community as they look at career options. Before we sign off, did you have any final thoughts for our audience or extra advice for students interested in the career of AI and education?
I just want to say thank you. It's so great to be a part of this. I want to say that your initiative, and you've done a beautiful job of leading this conversation and pulling out insights, which is pretty remarkable. I just say that those out there, like, this is an opportunity for us to build better things, right? To build better schools, better learning, better, collaborative functions, and not only in schools, but across like systems. So this is just that opportunity. And so if you want to hang out and you want to learn more, like, we have webinars. I'm on LinkedIn. That's how you found me. Just keep in touch. I care a lot about student voice. It's something I actually spent more of my day talking to students around the world than I did talking to educators. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just so important for your voices to be heard. And like, this is an opportunity for it to be heard pretty loud and hopefully very productive ways.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ms. Bickerstaff, for joining me today. That brings us to the conclusion of the episode of AI Trends with Ash. I will see you guys in my next episode. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.